Hey guys, welcome into another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I am James Haskell, along with my co-host Glenn Martin, and we're here to talk to you guys about a potential interest that the Ravens seem to have in a newly made free agent. But before we reveal who that is, we want you guys to take a second, hit the subscribe button, and if you haven't already, turn on notifications so you stay up to date on all the Ravens news. But Glenn, I'm going to reveal the name to you, and I want you to give you the floor to provide us with your instant reaction when you heard the report. Reportedly, the Ravens are one of multiple teams that are interested in bringing in veteran pass rusher Carlos Dunlap.
I like it. I mean, well, here, let me just say this, Jimmy. All right, so he obviously is. We know him from when he was a Cincinnati Bengal. Then he was traded last year to the Seattle Seahawks and kind of left on like a bit of a sour note from a team that he was there for about a decade in Cincinnati. He is 32 years old, just turned 32. He's 6'6", 285 pounds, DN. So let me just say this. I'm going to give arguments on both sides, I guess. I mean, obviously, I kind of let the cat out of the bag by saying I like it, but let me give at least some reasons why I could see fans not being happy with it. Eric DeCosta and John Harbaugh both recently spoke, and they mentioned what they expect out of their outside guys, their outside linebackers here in Baltimore. And it's a little different than what Carlos has done elsewhere, because typically he's been a 4-3 defensive end, a guy that's asked to rush the passer as well as support the run, but he's not asked too often to drop into coverage. Where in Baltimore, if you're being a 3-4 outside linebacker, here you're asked to do a lot of things. You're asked to hold up your end against the run. You're asked to rush the passer, but you're also asked to drop into coverage. I mean, we saw a lot of times where Matt Judon, Tyus Bowser got a pick in 3 straight games from that position. And I think that was kind of where Unique struggled to get on the field, because that's not something where, he really shines at, is dropping into coverage. So for that reason, I'm a little bit apprehensive about bringing him, because from a fit standpoint, he seems to fit more the traditional 4-3 defensive end role rather than an outside linebacker in a 3-4, which is what we run here in Baltimore. But also what Eric DeCosta and John said is if you have a certain trait that is very valuable, even if you don't do other things well that you're typically asked to do in that position, then you still add value, and they could still find a spot for you in Baltimore. And I look around our roster currently, and unless Unique or Matthew Judon or both are coming back at a heavily discounted price, I'm expecting both of those guys to leave in free agency. And I don't know who's rushing the passer in Baltimore. So just the fact that so here's the positives to bringing Carlos in. He can rush the passer. He's done it over his entire career. He's really not had a year in which he didn't have a successful sack season, especially when you compare him to the guys recently here in Baltimore since Suggs has left. I mean, he's right up there with all those guys. He's been in the AFC North. He understands what it takes to win in this division. It's the black and blue division. You got to be able to win in the trenches. He's done his part in doing that in Cincinnati for a long time. And I'm sure he would welcome a reunion back to the AFC North for a chance to beat up on the Cincinnati Bengals a couple of times a year when they left on not so great terms. So I think the fact that he is a guy that could hold his own against the run and more than hold his own. He's 6'6", 285, and he's a talented guy, but he can guarantee you some pass rush ability, which you don't have on the roster currently. To me, I think you bring him in. I think you could bring him in at a much discounted price than what you'd have to pay the other 2 guys that are looking to leave. He's an older guy, but this could be a 1 or 2 year deal, maybe 3-year deal, and you do it at a price that fits what Baltimore can pay this year. And I think it'd be a great ad. Now, I do understand he's not going to be dropping in coverage and getting many picks, but what he can do, I think, is valuable. And so that for that reason, I'm happy that I'm happy to hear that he's linked, and I'd be hopeful to see him come here.
Yeah, so I understand your points on both sides. I agree with you that I am optimistic about the potential fit. Like you said, it's fair. The fair points were made by Eric DeCosta on both sides, where we want to get guys that fit, but also, and he specifically, it was almost like he was talking about Carlos Dunlap without talking about him, because he said, if there's a guy that's traditionally in a 4-3, right?
Yep.
that doesn't necessarily fit that plays end that doesn't necessarily fit our system. I think he said that hasn't been asked to drop into coverage, but
he may have been talking about J.J. Watt as well.
Yeah, JJ, Carlos. There's a number of guys, but certainly it made my ears ring today when I saw Carlos Dunlap and I thought about what Eric said, and I think it's really interesting. A couple things. If the Ravens are interested in him, how many other teams have scouted Carlos Dunlap as many times as we have?
Right.
You know what I mean? So that means that the guy can play, right? There should be no questions about who he is as a player, because if you believe in the Ravens front office, they've had the most looks out of pretty much any other team except the other three teams, and one of his former teams, so he's not going back to the Bengals, in the entire league. So I like that. I like his size overall. I like his leadership, his edginess. He's consistently healthy. He's pretty available. I like his height in that, you got a guy like Baker who's relatively short. You add another big guy up there along with Calais. Imagine him and Calais up there. I mean, that would just be fun to watch. Just the idea of throwing around that. Yeah, Brandon's relatively short, but he still gets his, relatively
guy,
speaking.
though.
Yeah,
he's a big
but
boy.
he still gets his big old Paul up there, right?
Yeah, yep.
So I'm excited about this potential. And I'm predicting that he is 40% of what the per annum cost will be for Judon and Ngakoue in this coming year. I would not be surprised at all.
And if you're Carlos, I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. And first of all, you mentioned his health, and yeah, he's been remarkably healthy. I mean, I go back to his first year; he played in 14 of 16. Then second year, all 16 the following year, 16. I mean, he shows up. He's ready to play every week, and I understand he's getting older, and things could change as you get older. But yeah, I think that he would still be a nice add, and I agree with you. I think you could get him for around $6 million, maybe annually. It really depends on how long they want to do contracts in this kind of strange year. But I think you can get him around $6 million, whereas the other guys right now are projected around 14, 15. So the price would seem to be right. The biggest thing is, do you have guys on the roster that can fill in the gaps of what he doesn't bring? And I think at least in theory, if they can bring a guy, I mean, it seems like Pernell McPhee might be on his way back to Baltimore, but I'm not sure how much they're asking him to drop into coverage either. So I think it would behoove the Ravens to try and get at least Bowser to come back, because he showed in college and in the pros the ability to drop into coverage, and not just drop into coverage, but do so and have production there, get interceptions, which is not something we see here from that position really since Terrell Suggs was picking off screen passes to the wide receivers back when he was here. So I think it makes all the sense in the world. And why the only other teams I could see the biggest competitors are the Browns to me. I mean, I look at the Browns, they can offer a lot of the same things. They have Myles Garrett opposite him. As far as I know, they run a 4-3, if I'm remembering correctly. So it would be a more natural transition, because he wouldn't have to really change much from a position standpoint. But they don't have the history of winning here. Typically, when he was with Cincinnati, they were a doormat. I mean, Cleveland was an absolute doormat. So I could see him not necessarily wanting to buy into the Browns because of their history and his history playing against them. But he had to have also been envious when I'm sure he's had friends on the Ravens. I mean, they all spend time after the game and they hug and, see former teammates from college and stuff like that. I'm sure he was envious of the amenities that the Ravens were receiving while being here. I mean, he's coming from the Bengals, who have the worst amenities in the National Football League, still don't have an indoor facility, so the Ravens have the top of the top. I mean, they have the best facilities. So Dunlap's got to see a lot of intriguing things about coming to Baltimore, and he's got to be excited. But I'm sure we're not the only team, the only team that's linked to him and the only team that's exploring bringing him in. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens, but I would be in favor of it as long as they can find a guy that can fit in that role. And I think that role would be pretty easy to find, a guy that can fill in the gaps that he would have in his talent, I guess, or in his game.
Yeah, certainly. And I think the other big portion of it that's a selling point is Wink Martindale. And Wink showing that he can use veterans in spots that don't exhaust them and allow them to magnify what they're good at, what they're best at, right? So I think that's another big piece of it as well. But I'm optimistic about it. I like it. I like you said, I like that we're linked to him. I like the fit. I think that he can work out here and his skill set can shine. So let us know what you guys think. Are you as excited about the potential? Nothing's for sure yet, but about the potential of him coming to Baltimore as we are. Give us your thoughts. Leave them in the comments below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.